Hello everyone, this is G and I'm back with another video. So I hope everybody is well today. Excuse me, let me just turn this up a little bit so I can... Okay, so hopefully that will resolve any sound issues. So anyway, as I was saying, uh, good morning, or at least it's morning for me. It's 8:16 in the morning here in New York, in sunny, cold New York City. So the perfect fall day for me at least. So I hope everybody is well wherever you are, whatever you're doing. And I wanted to discuss this article. I want to thank Neon and Geeky at Clownfish TV because it's through their video about it that I heard about this. So I thought I would opine. So, first of all, thank you to Neon and Geeky. And second, the article from Variety is that ABC sets new inclusion guidelines. Let me actually read what it says. ABC sets new inclusion guidelines to amplify underrepresented groups on TV. So, given that I actually deal a lot with numbers regarding ethnic diversity and whatnot in my professional work, for those who don't know, I work in the compliance and diversity office at a New York City college, and so we actually are quite concerned. We're always, looking at how diverse our employees are, our faculty in particular are, and whatnot. And each year, and I've been doing this for about 10 years now. In the current school I work at, I've been there for about 8 years now. So I've got a lot of experience in this, you could say, especially as regards diversity and inclusion and all of that. So, given that this actually is very close to, I guess you could say, to the work I do in my professional life, I thought I would opine as to why ABC's inclusion guidelines are really just gonna achieve nothing, or at least nothing positive, and how this attempt to diversify is really just going to result in nothing good, if anything at all. So, let's go over a few parts of the article. So, the beginning of the article reads, in a bid to create further catalyst for real and sustained change, ABC Entertainment, for those who may not know, ABC is owned by the Walt Disney Company. ABC Entertainment has set forth a slate of new inclusion standards for all primetime series to ensure multi-dimensional representation across the entire creative and production process. I personally am not quite sure what they mean by multi-dimensional, unless we're doing like a comic book themed show or whatever. Like, what do you mean by that? But anyway, it says here, the initiative is meant to increase diversity both on screen and behind the scenes. In a letter to creatives and colleagues, ABC Executive Vice President of Development and Content Strategy, Simran Sethi, or Sethi? Sethi? I don't know. It's laid out the new inclusion guidelines and offered up a database of diverse and underrepresented talent and crew, as well as a list of vendors owned by members of underrepresented groups. These new guidelines are intended to make our content and our sets as inclusive as possible and will serve as a further catalyst for real and sustained change, wrote Sethi. We want to take this moment to evaluate systems and habits in an effort to remove barriers to access and opportunity. It's important for us to look around the room to see who's not there, and then take the steps not only to bring them in, but also set them up for success. So, the article later goes on to say, there are 4 separate sets of standards that span on-screen representation, creative leadership, below-the-line workers, and industry access and career development. When it comes to on-screen talent and characters, the mandate asks creatives to fulfill at least 3 of 5 guidelines. When you have to ask for people to fill fulfill these guidelines, they're no longer guidelines. But anyway, that could include having 50% or more regular and recurring written characters from underrepresented groups, 50% or more regular and recurring actors from those groups, and meaningful integration of underrepresented groups in the overall themes and narratives. Of course, as I'm reading, there has to be a dog barking outside. I love living in the city. Anyways, I was saying, 50% or more regular and recurring actors from those groups, and meaningful integration of underrepresented groups in the overall themes and narratives in a series. Similar criteria are asked of below the line true and creative leadership, including half or more of episodic directors or producer and above level writing staff coming from underrepresented groups. In the career development arena, criteria include paid employment opportunities, showrunner participation in Walt Disney Television talent development initiatives, or guild mentorship programs, among other possible actions. And then it goes on to state that the network hopes to reach the goals in, incrementally, hoping to reach 2 of the 4 standards by May 2021, 3 out of the 5, 3 quarters by October of 2021, and then meet all 4 standards by May 2022. It's offering showrunner training and hiring advice and other resources. Right, and it says here that the mandate echoes CBS recent efforts to foster more diversity, which includes 25% resource allocation of future script development budgets to projects created or co-created by BIPOC, which I think is meant to be Black, Indigenous, people of color. So basically anybody not white, it seems. And to ensure that CBS writers' room staffs are at least 40% BIPOC. Now, of course, this was talking about ABC. Not ABC, sorry, CBS. So this was CBS's recent efforts with the 25% resource allocation and the 40% BIPOC thing. So there's also a chart of the inclusion standards, which is incredibly hard to read in this article. I realize it's really hard to read. But some of the stuff it says here is that standard A, on-screen representation, at least 3 of the following 5 arenas need to be met. It says characters, 50% or more regular and recurring written characters come from underrepresented groups. 50% or more regular and recurring characters come from underrepresented groups. Secondary characters, meaningful inclusion of underrepresented groups as secondary characters. Series premise, meaningful integration of underrepresented groups in overall themes and narratives. Episodic storytelling, ongoing meaningful integration of underrepresented groups in episodic themes and narratives. Then the second one is about creators, talking about 50% or more episodic directors coming from underrepresented groups. They basically mean non-white. 50% or more of the producer or writing staff, 50% or more executive editor and all that. Casting directors from an underrepresented group, has not previously worked on a Walt Disney television show. Meaningful representation of underrepresented groups in senior leadership. Then it goes on to below the line. Talks about the production department. And again, just more percentages, more quotas. Right, I can't, it's hurting my eyes trying to read this mandate. Here's the problem with this. First of all, it's going to, excuse me. Okay. So, it's going to, first of all, it's going to stifle any creativity and any creative freedom that show creators, producers, whoever, writers, even had at ABC. So whatever freedom they had, whatever creative expression, creative freedom they have, is now effectively gone because they have to worry about meeting all of these quotas, 50% this, 20% that, 50% here, 50% that, 50%, let's be honest, non-white people, right, on screen and off screen and all this other stuff. So creativity is stifled right there. Now, the product that's going to be produced for most of these is probably not going to be all that great, because when you put all these percentages in there, you immediately make the focus of the work not the creative process, not the themes and the characters and the storytelling, which is what makes good stories good stories. Now it's all focused on numbers. Do we have enough of these people? Do we have enough of that people? Do we have enough, whatever these mandates are? Like, you have a checklist now. Get my hands in this. There we go. You have a checklist now. In the moment that you have corporate demands made upon you, right? And I get it. It's a business, right? They always have to be in the business first and foremost of making money. There was a quote by, I think it was Michael Eisner, who used to be the head of Disney back during the Disney Renaissance in the 90s. And he said something to the effect of, like, we're just in the business of making money, right? We're not in the business of making art or making a statement, but that in trying to make money, you might end up creating art or making a statement. And if you look at the Disney Renaissance films, they ended up being not just big money makers, but animated classics, which now Disney has just strip mined and basically just pulled a Shang Tsung and just pulled their souls out and make these soulless remakes, which maybe were welcomed with open arms 3 years ago when they had Beauty and the Beast, which I hated personally. I hated that film. I want my money back. It's been 3 years and I want my money back. But now, as we've seen with the live action version of Mulan, right? It's failed, to my knowledge, it's failed in America. It's failed in China. It's failed in mainland China, which was the very audience they were trying to pander to. Right, so there's that. Then there's all the controversies surrounding it, whether it's the choice of the actress and her police stance for what's going on in Hong Kong, the protests there, the concentration camps. Apparently, the makers of the film was made around or in some of the concentration camps that the Chinese have around. What is it? I don't know how to say the group's name. The Yuriker? I don't know how to say the name. People, right? But there's a lot of shady, not good stuff going on there, right? Stuff that is costing people their freedom, their lives, and then Disney has the nerve to thank the arm of the Chinese government that is responsible for the oppression of I believe they are a religious minority. Again, literally in the concentration camp, right? This isn't a joke. It's real. Like, people are being killed, torn from their homes, torn from their families. It's an atrocity. And Disney, because they were trying to get that Chinese cheddar, as Neon would say, was totally okay with this. Was totes okay with it. Right, so obviously creates a lot of problems. But to focus on this for a moment, this has stifled any creativity that they had left. All that's going to come out for the majority of projects is just soulless, by the book, by the numbers shows. See, we hire, BIPOC people after all. See, here they are. That's not how diversity, at least true diversity, works. Here's the thing. If there was a problem with representation at ABC, this will not solve it. This will not bolster their diversity cred, as it were. People are just going to roast them on Twitter, as people always do, because this is, in my opinion, incredibly insincere. This is not how you diversify your workforce or your creative product or anything like that. Now, you diversify by trying to create uh, I would say, I don't want to say product, but create. I'm trying to figure out how to say it. But you have to make the people want to come to you. I can't think of the right word right now. But basically, if you want a diverse audience, you need to make them come to you. You have to put something out there that says, hey, come see us. Come work for us. Just putting people in little spots here and there is not going to impress anybody who truly cares about diversity. Right? This is not the way to go about it. If there is a problem, this isn't going to resolve it. And if there is not a problem with ABC's diversity, then guess what's going to happen? It's going to create a problem. This is basically, in my opinion, a zero-sum game. They will gain nothing positive. There are no net positives about putting quotas. Now, what I want to talk about, and this relates to my work, is the difference between this type of diversity and then real world, real life diversity. Right? This type of diversity I would equate to a pizza. Now, hear me out. I know it sounds like a weird comparison, but hear me out. What I mean by that is that with a pizza, regardless of how many slices are in that pizza, whether it's 4, 6, 8, 16, whatever, each slice of pizza is going to be perfectly shaped, right? No one's going to get any more or any less, right? And that's why I compare it to a pizza. Everyone gets the same amount, right? And while that's a wonderful ideal, here's the reality, and I can attest to this. 10 years, count them. Get my hands in the frame. 10 years of making reports about diversity and how diverse the employees where I work are. Real diversity is a hot mess. I want to repeat that. Real diversity is a hot mess. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. What I mean by that is that real diversity is, by its very definition, unequal. It is uneven. It does not have 25% of everything, or 20% of everything, or 50% men and 50% women. Real diversity has its over representation in certain areas and its under representation in others. Because in real diversity, there are so many things that you have no say over. For example, it is my job, or it's a huge part of my job, is to track job searches that we put out. So we can include them in this report we have to do each year, right? So we advertise, right? Depending on the type of job and what job group and job category it's in, we advertise. De- Depending on the type of position, we may advertise to hundreds of different places, literally, right? And we reach out to everyone: Asians, blacks, Hispanics, and Latinos, people who are veterans, people who are disabled. uh, in some instances, like with faculty, may reach out beyond New York City's limits, right? So we reach out as much as we can to all different types of groups. But we, especially in my particular office, we have no say in who applies in the end. Right? Now we look at the diversity of the applicant pool, and once you've done this several times over for years, you get a general idea of how the applicant pool for a particular job is going to look, because you just notice certain trends, right? Women tend to apply for a lot of, say, coordinator jobs, for example, whereas men tend to apply more for, say, IT gigs, right? You start noticing trends, right? And that's okay. I definitely think that if you're looking to diversify, you need to understand the trends and see, okay, where are these people coming from? What is um, uh, overrepresented what is underrepresented. So I'm not against that in and of itself. Definitely, if you're looking to reach out and you're looking to market yourself, you have to understand the trends. But real diversity is not this, cookie cut or pizza cut, right? Everybody gets the same amount. You get the same amount of people, right? 20% whites, 20% Asians, 20% blacks, da da da. It doesn't work that way. Certain jobs will attract certain types of people. IT gigs, for example, tend to attract a fair amount of Asian men, right? Same way nursing tends to attract a lot of women. That is neither good nor bad. It just is. We have no say over who applies, how many men, how many women, how many Asians, how many blacks. All we can do is just take who applies. Again, we're advertising in literally hundreds of different places. And then we look at the applications, right? Or rather, we have a search committee, which I help guide along the search process. Or the office, the office I work in, I should say, helps guide we help guide the search committee through the search process. And then, of course, the search committee has to look through all these resumes usually. Sometimes they get screened by HR, but in most cases, you have to look through. The search committee has to look through every resume. Because just because someone applies for a job does not automatically mean that they are minimally qualified for it. So you have to sort all of those applications out first of all. Then, after that, you have to look at the applications you have left, the ones that at least meet the minimum qualifications. And then you have to choose out of that group who's good enough for an interview. And then the interviews have to go on. And then you have to see out of the interviewees who is the best one. And once you have that, okay, is the best person gonna take the job? In most instances they do, but in some instances they don't. They get a better offer, or they feel that they're being lowballed, or a bunch of different things can happen. So it really is it's in a weird way, it's almost like Highlander, right? There can be only one. But except that it's not the individuals fighting against each other, right? It's all being sorted out and decided by the search committee or the hiring manager in the end. But still, you can only, at least in most of the jobs that I track and deal with, you can only have one winner. You can only have one hire. 300 people can apply, but you can only hire one person. And that's why these things, real diversity is such a hot mess. There are just so many factors that go into trying to diversify that you have no say over. You have no say over who applies. You have no say over, for example, societal perceptions of certain professions. For example, nursing is a female dominated field to the point where, and I'm guilty of this, a male nurse will be defined as the male nurse. Right? Seeing men in that role is so rare that when you do, you automatically make an issue of or at least mention the person's gender, right? Oh, look, it's the male nurse. It's Chris, the male nurse. Now, is nursing in and of itself a male or female thing? Is the act of nursing, the profession of nursing, necessarily a girl thing? No. What you have to do in nursing, right, is not gender specific. But when you've spent literally your entire life seeing women in that role, right, you come to associate nursing with women. Nursing is a female dominated field, as is, for example, education. It's female dominated. No one complains about this. But when you have jobs that are typically male dominated, such as IT or, say, trade skills like electrician, painter, uh, thermostat fixer, stuff like that, suddenly there's a problem and we're not diverse enough. And I have expressed many times to my supervisor how much, or supervisors over the years, I should say, how much this irritates me. Because we have no say over how society sees certain jobs, because the way society views certain jobs is going to impact how, uh, uh, I guess you could say, I'm trying to think of the term, how group dominated. I'm not sure that's the best term. A profession is, right. For example, a lot of Asians are in IT. Whenever we put out an IT job, we get a lot of Asian male applicants, right? Maybe it's because the Asian culture, emphasizes getting a good job and studying electronics or whatever it is. I don't know, but that's the trend that we get a lot of Asians now. That trend could certainly change in time. Maybe in time it will become a much more gender neutral thing, right? For example, pants used to be, the clothing of men. Only men wore pants, and if you were a woman who was wearing pants, you were bucking the system, and you were controversial. Now pants are seen as unisex, right? Or wearing a T-shirt or a tank top, right? That was seen as bad form because it was seen as underwear, more or less. Now it's just regular clothing. So yeah, perceptions in society can change, and I hope they do. I hope we get more women in IT and construction, and I hope we get more men in nursing, so that these things become gender neutral. But I don't know when, where, or if that will happen. And all we can do is just go year to year and see what our numbers are like. And that is beyond us, right? Whatever the advertising brings in, or whoever the advertising brings in, is whoever the advertising brings in. It is not our job or our responsibility to say, oh, we have too many white people or too many men in the applicant pool. We have no say over that. And believe me, we are routinely questioned in my work about why we have underrepresentation here or there or this or that. And we usually respond with, we advertised. These are the people who applied. Of the people who applied, these were the ones who met the minimum qualifications. Of those, this was the interview pool. Of that, this is the hire. There's nothing we can do about that. Now you want to talk about advertising? Okay, talk to HR. That we have no say over that. Another thing that impacts diversity in the real world is things like low, low, location, right? Where your workplace is set, right? If you're in a, say, well-known common area that's easy to get to, right? You'll probably have a different uh, applicant pool, right? Maybe one that's a little more robust, little more diverse than one that is, say, out of the way. There's also the prestige, right, of the place that is hiring. If it's well known and well respected, naturally everybody wants to work there because it looks good on your resume. If the place is not so well known, or if it has a bad reputation, people may not want to work there as much, because then they become associated with it. Another thing is salary, right? Money, 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 money. Right? You need to be able to offer people money or benefits, right? You have to be able to give them something, especially if you're asking them to come to a job that is out of the way for them. You have to give them something that makes it worth it. You have to compensate them in some fashion, right? So you have to offer them money, or you have to offer them benefits, and then keep in mind, this is very competitive. You're not the only, in my case, we are not the only school in town, right? We have other schools, some bigger, some smaller, that we have to compete with, especially when it comes to recruiting faculty, right? Everybody's fighting for the best faculty members because that bolsters your image as a university if you have a strong faculty. So we're always looking to bring in the best, but so is every other school around, right? So you have to be able to offer your potential employees things that make it worth working in your institute. Let me get my hand in here. Working in your institution that they can't get anywhere else working at some other place. And there are other places that can say offer more money and more perks, and you've got to find a way to say, yeah, they can offer you this or that, but we can do this. Right? We can maybe offer you more money to do research or whatever it is. Maybe it's more time off. Maybe it's not working during the summer. It could be a variety of things, right? But the point is that you need to be able to sweeten the pot and make it worthwhile for a person to come work for you, especially when you are not the only business in town. As this very article mentioned, CBS is also looking to diversify, which means that ABC and CBS are going to be competing for a lot of the same people. And you've got to make it worth the applicant's while to work for you instead of for the other guy. That's not easy. And especially in my office, that is, again, beyond our control. Right? So there's all these factors that are beyond us that we have no personal say over, yet impact our diversity numbers from year to year. And that is why I say that true diversity is messy. True diversity is unequal. There's only so much you can do and only so much you can say over it. And for example, and I have been asked this repeatedly in my work, why don't you have more Asians in your Black Studies course? My response to this is usually, it's Black Studies. What do you expect? It's Black Studies. There's obviously a certain demographic you are reaching out for. And it's not Asians, right? It's not Asians. Now, let me be clear. I have no problem with the fact that the school I work at has a Black Studies. Okay, fine, cool. I understand why. A lot of the people around are of African American or African American descent, right? They're the local people are going to be, a huge bulk of our student population. So yeah, I understand having that, but it's like, don't ask such very obvious questions, please. Is the best way that I can put it. It's like, how do you expect to diversify when you already have set out to reach a certain demographic with the name alone? What did you expect? And yet, this is a question that my office has had to field numerous times over the years. True diversity is a hot mess. True diversity is something that you really don't have a lot to say over because the factors that create diversity, location, money, prestige, interest, societal views of certain professions, are beyond us. They're completely beyond us. So, creating arbitrary percentage quotas, 50% this, 50% that, it's not going to create true diversity. It's not. All it's going to do is just give people who feel left out for one reason or another more reason to complain about being left out. It could potentially lead to lawsuits, right? If you have a person who doesn't get hired, they can look at this and go, you didn't hire me because I'm not part of the underrepresented group. So this could actually get them into a lot of legal trouble in a variety of ways, regardless of whether or not if they say it's just guidelines. Right? This could still get them into a legal hot mess. It's not going to improve ABC's product. It's not going to help their creators be creative. And especially with the actors themselves, guess what's going to happen? You're either going to get low quality actors who just are looking for a job and who are going to use this as a way to get a job, or for the few actors you will get who are actually really talented, now they're going to be wondering, was I hired because of my talent and my skill? Was I hired because I was the best person available? Or was I hired because of my skin or because of my gender? And guess what? It's not just the performer themselves who are going to be asking that question. Their fellow coworkers, the writers, other people too are going to be asking themselves about the legitimacy of this person getting a role, right? And perhaps the legitimacy of their own roles. Was I chosen because they think I'm a good writer, or because I have a winning complexion, or because I have the right set of tools downstairs, right? And I don't think people want to feel that. I don't think most people want hand-me-outs. Sorry, handouts, or hand-me-downs. Most people like to earn things. They want to earn their place in a company and not feel like they were just granted a job or just gifted a position or a role just because they fit some sort of arbitrary diversity quota, which is not going to actually help anything in the end. So I think that ABC and CBS and other, companies in Hollywood that employ this are just setting themselves up for failure in the end. Because faux diversity leads to nothing but failure. It's just a it's just a crash. It's just a crash. Look, the audience will only put up with so much BS. Look at all the films last year that failed, right? The Dark Phoenix saga film, Terminator Dark Fate. Terminator Dark Fate never should have failed. Never. You had Linda Hamilton coming back as Sarah Connor. You had Arnie back as the Terminator. That alone should have sold it because people went, Terminator 2, I'm there! But what happened? They killed John Connor in the beginning of the film, which upsets the fans. They have Sarah Connor hate the fact that she was ever a mother. That upsets the fans. And then when the other two women, like the female Terminator and then the little girl who's basically playing John Connor's role, when the audience feels that the only reason they're here is because they're female and one of them was a Latina, I think. Well, they reject it. They reject it. They don't go see it, right? The people who do see it tell their friends or they make videos, and then everybody else goes, "Oh, really? That's what happens. That's what happens. I'm not spending money on that. I'm not spending money on this. Why would I? It's not what I want." So, and I feel that's the same thing that's happening here. And I want to be clear. I am very much pro diversity. I am a product. I'm literally a product of diversity. I'm a biracial woman, right? But I am not a fan, and I cannot, in good conscience, support going about trying to be diverse in this way by trying to set diversity guidelines that you must have. It's not a guideline in truth, right? It's a requirement at this point, ABC, that you must have 50% of your main cast, more or less, be underrepresented groups. Let's just call it what it is. Let's call a spade a spade. What they mean is non-white. Well, here's the thing. What if, say, they want to bring back, I don't know, let's say they want to create a show based on Seven Samurai. right? Let's say they want to do Seven Samurai. Well, here's the thing about Seven Samurai. It takes place in Japan. You're not gonna find black people in Japan during the friggin' samurai period. You might find one stray foreigner. And even then, the foreigner most likely would have been white, probably Dutch. But you're not gonna find a black person. And you're not gonna find a Latino person. Because those people are not indigenous to Japan or East Asia as a whole. Same way, you are not gonna find a lot of Latinos, for example, say in the Wild West period in the US, right? You'll find a lot of cowboys, a lot of Indians, a lot of white people, a lot of slaves, right? But if you wanted to set a show in that period, right? Guess what you're not going to see? You're not going to see a lot of Asians in America at that time, and you're not going to see a lot of Latinos at that time. If it's meant to be a period piece, and if the creator wants to be in any means accurate to the time period, that means those two groups are out. But now, if you have this guideline saying, well, 50% of the cast needs to be non-white. Well, now you're struggling to uh, diversify where there was no need for diversity. Or say, take for example the Viking show, right? I forget which channel that's on, was it Sci-Fi or whatever, right? But the Vikings were a Nordic people, right? Fair skin, blonde hair. You know what you're not gonna too often find in the Nordic parts of the world, especially back when the Vikings were around? People who look like me. You're not gonna find a lot of people who look like me, right? In the Great White North. We don't go there.